The Bible reading of Daniel chapter 2, the statue and the kingdom. In the second year of the kingship of Nebuchadnezzar, he had a dream and dreams, and these began to frighten him in his spirit. He was agitated. His very sleep was made to be something beyond him. So the king said to call the magic practicing priests and the conjurers and the sorcerers of the Chaldeans, and to tell the king his dreams. And they proceeded to come in and to stand before the king. Then the king said to them, "There is a dream that I have dreamed, and my spirit is agitated to know what the dream is." At that the Chaldeans spoke to the king in the Aramaic language, saying, "O king, live on even times for indefinite. Say what the dream is, and your servants shall show you the very interpretation." And the king was answering and saying to the Chaldeans, "The word is being promulgated by me. If you men do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, dismembered is what you will be, and into public privies your own houses will be turned into. But if the dream and its interpretation you will show, gifts and presents and very much dignity you will receive on my part. Therefore show me the very dream and its interpretation." They answered a second time and were saying, "Let the king live, and say what the dream is to his servants, and we shall show the interpretation." And the king was answering and saying, "And for a fact I'm aware that is time is what you men are trying to gain, for as much you have perceived that the word is being promulgated by me. For if you do not make known to me the very dream, this very one order a sentence will be upon you. But it is a lying and wronging word that you have agreed to say before me, until the time itself is changed. Therefore tell me the very dream, and I shall make known to you. You can show the very interpretation of it." And the Chaldeans answered before the king, and they were saying, "There does not exist a man on dry land that is able to show the matter of the king, for as much there is no grand king or governor ever asked such a thing as this before, of any magic practicing priest or conjurer. But this thing that the king himself has asked is difficult, and no one is able to interpret it, except the gods, whose dwelling does not exist with the flesh at all." Because of the king himself became very angry and got very furious, and said to destroy all the wise men in Babylon. And the order itself went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they were looking for Daniel and his companions for them to be killed also. At this time Daniel for his part addressed with the counsel of insensibleness to Anarach, the chief of the bodyguard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon, and he was answering and saying to him, "For what reason is there such a harsh order put on by the part of the king?" And then it was made known to Daniel the very matter. So Daniel himself went and asked from the king that he should be given him time expressly to show the very interpretation of the king. After that Daniel went to his own house, and to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azaniah, his companions, he made known the very matter, even for them to ask for mercies on the part of God of heaven concerning this very secret, in order they might not be made to be destroyed along with everyone else. Daniel and his companions with the remainder of the wise men of Babylon. Then it was to Daniel in a night vision the secret was revealed. Consequently Daniel himself blessed the God of heaven. And Daniel was answering and saying, "Let the name of God become blessed, and time indefinite, even to time indefinite. For wisdom and mightiness, they belong to him, and he is changing times and seasons, removing kings and setting up kings, giving wisdom to the wise one, and knowledge to the very ones knowing discernment. He is revealing the deep things and the concealed things, knowing what is in darkness, and with him the light does dwell. To you, O God, of my forefathers, I am giving praise and commendation, because wisdom and mightiness you have given to me. And now you have made known to me what we have requested of you, for you have made known to us the very matter of the king." Because of this, Daniel himself went to the chief of the bodyguards, who had been appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. And he went and said to him, "Do not destroy any of the wise men. Take me before the king, that I may show the very interpretation itself to the king." And then he ran off in a hurry and took Daniel before the king. And this is what he said to him: I have found an able-bodied man of the exiles of Judah who can make known the interpretation itself to the king. And the king was answering and saying to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you competent enough to make known to me the dream that I beheld and its interpretation? Daniel was answering before the king and saying, The secret of the king himself is asking of the wise men, and the conjurers and the magic practicing priests and the astrologers themselves are unable to show to the king. However, there exists a God in heaven who is a revealer of secrets, and he has made known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what is going to occur in the final part of the days. Your dream and your visions upon in your head upon your bed is this. As for you, O king, upon your bed, your own thoughts became up, and regards what is occurring after this. The one who is the revealer of secrets has made known to you what is to occur. And as for me, it is not through any wisdom that exists in me any more than any other one alive that this secret is revealed to me, except that the intent and the interpretation be made known to the king himself, and the thoughts of your heart that you may know, O king, happen to be beholding, and look, a certain immense image. That image statue was very large, and the brightness of which was extraordinary, and was standing in front of you, and its appearance was dreadful. As regards that image, its head was that of gold, and its breasts were the arms of silver, and its belly and thighs were of copper, and its legs were of iron, and its feet were partly of iron and partly of molded clay. You kept on looking until a stone was cut out, not by hands, and it struck the image on the feet of iron and the molded clay, and crushed them. And at that time the iron and the molten clay and the copper and the silver and the gold were altogether crushed and became like chaff from the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried it away, so that no trace at all was found of them. And as for the stone that struck the image, it became a large mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream and its interpretation, we shall say before the king. You, O king, the king of kings, you whom God of heaven has given the kingdom and the might and the strength and the dignity, and in whose hand he has given whatever the sons of mankind are dwelling, the beasts of the field and the winged creatures of heaven, to whom he has made ruler over all of them, you yourself are the head of gold. And after you will rise up a kingdom inferior to you, and another kingdom, a third one, of copper, and that will rule over the whole earth. And as for the fourth kingdom, it will prove to be strong like iron, for as much iron is crushing and grinding everything else, so like iron it shatters, and it will crush everything and shatter all these other things. And where you beheld the feet and the toes to be partly of mold, clay, and of a potter, and partly of iron, the kingdom itself will prove to be divided, but somewhat of a hardness of iron will prove to be in it, for as much as you beheld the iron mixed with moist clay. And as for the toes of the feet being partly of iron and partly of molten clay, the kingdom will partly prove to be strong and will partly prove to be fragile. Whereas you beheld iron mixed with moist clay, it will become to be mixed with the offspring of mankind, and they will not prove to be sticking together, this one with that one, just as iron is not mixing with molten clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be brought to ruin, and the kingdom itself will not be passed on to any other people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, and it itself will stand a time indefinite. For as much as you beheld that the mountain of stone was cut not by hands, and it was crushing the iron and the copper and the mold and clay and the silver and the gold, the grand God himself has made known to the king what will occur after this, and the dream is reliable and the interpretation is trustworthy. At that time King Nebuchadnezzar fell down upon his face to Daniel and paid homage, and he said to offer up even presents and incense to him. The king was answering Daniel and saying, Truly, the God of you men is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, because you were able to reveal this secret. Consequently, the king made Daniel someone great. With many big gifts he gave him, and he made him to rule over the judicial district of Babylon and the chief prefects over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel, for his part, made the request of the king that he may appoint over the administration of the judicial district of Babylon Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. but Daniel was in the court of the king.